Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth here, and welcome to track 46 of the 4x4 Earth podcast, The Future of Electric 4-Wheel Drives with Robert Pepper.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Hello everyone, how did you go with the episodes that we had with Ruthie? They've proven to be really popular, lots and lots of downloads there. And we covered a lot of territory about the future of four-wheel driving and keeping some of the tracks open, something that we're both really passionate about. So if you missed out on those, check the show notes, there'll be a link to those podcasts. This week, something fairly topical, the future of four-wheel drives as far as electric vehicles goes. And I'm talking with no better person to discuss this topic than Robert Pepper, Australia's #1 four-wheel driving journalist. So let's get right into the podcast with Robert. Hey Robert, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much, James. Always a pleasure to be here.
Now, I think you're the perfect person to be able to answer this question. Evidently, Bill Shorten wants to take away our weekend. What's the story with this?
Well, it's just a beat-up, really, as you see from both sides of politics from time to time. But the basics behind it is that Labor have a policy that by 2030, which is just a mere 11 years' time, then they want to have a target of half of all new vehicles being sold as electric. Now, a couple of things to stress with that. That is half of new cars sold. I'm not clear if that means when cars mean all types of vehicle or just actually passenger cars. That's the first thing. And secondly, it is new cars sold. It's not all cars being scrapped and everyone's got to, get rid of every car in Australia and convert half of them to electric. So that's the basis behind it. Now, there's nothing to worry about because we're still going to be driving petrol and diesel utes for quite some time to come.
Where do you think we're going to go then with electric-powered four-wheel drives?
Well, at the moment, electric vehicles, they're becoming more and more of a viable option as pretty much every day goes by. Another manufacturer will come out with new vehicles. In the last sort of 6 weeks, we've had Hyundai's Ioniq come on the market, which is a pure electric in one version, and it's a hybrid in another, and a plug-in hybrid in another version. Jaguar just released our I-Pace, and Audi's got one on the way. There's just more and more coming through. I think they're already a viable option for anyone that wants to do less than sort of 200 to 300 kilometres at a time. And if you think about it, do you know what the average mileage in, let's say, Victoria is for a car per year?
No. Good question, though. What is it?
Take a guess. Yeah, take a guess.
I would have thought it would be on the low side.
How low?
10,000 kilometres?
Yeah, a bit more than that, 14,000. Now, if you drove 260 days a year, which is every working day, that's less than 40 kilometres a day.
Yep.
Right, so realistically, there's a lot of journeys which Australians do, which can be done by an electric vehicle right now. Every day pretty much I drive into the city, and that's 40, 50 Ks and back. I can comfortably do that in an electric vehicle, even go further than that. But there's one area where electric vehicles don't work yet, and that's the area which is most dear to the listeners of this podcast. I was going to say readers there, and that is long-range touring. Now, I can tell you there is no electric vehicle on the market that does the kind of range we need to sort of tow a caravan or camper trailer or go four-wheel driving. It just doesn't exist, right? And it is my belief that as long as there's a desire of people to go to remote places, there will be a vehicle that allows them to do that. Now, at the moment, that is a petrol or diesel four-wheel drive, and that will remain to be a petrol or diesel four-wheel drive until such time as the electric vehicles or potentially hydrogen are able to take over. And that won't be for a while yet, because I can tell you that if a car's got a 470 claimed electric range, Tesla Model X, the actual range is quite a bit less than that, and even a lot less once you start putting a roof rack on it and loading it up. So it will be quite a while yet before the electric car can completely overtake four-wheel drives, but it can absolutely be a viable day-to-day daily driver right now.
And this comes back to one of my questions are some of the older classic four-wheel drives, are they going to start increasing in value because of the fact that you're going to be able to do the kind of things that you want to do, particularly go out on that long journey, a lot better than you could with some of the new vehicles that are coming out?
I think that the older four-wheel drives will definitely appreciate in value, but not because of the reason you said, because I don't think there's going to be... I just cannot see any move to push diesel and petrol four-wheel drives off the road until such time as electric or hydrogen can do the same sort of long-range job. I just cannot see it. I can see those vehicles becoming more niche, absolutely, but not otherwise. But I do think that your classic four-wheel drives will go up in value. I mean, just look at the TD42 Nissan Patrol, right? I mean, people love that thing, the old 100 series diesels, right? And the reason is because they're not electronic. You get this kind of purity of driving experience and that you simply don't get out of the newer vehicles. And that's been the case in sports cars for a while now. And I think it will be also true of four-wheel drives. I drove the new Jimny recently, and, to me that felt like a old-school four-wheel drive just produced in 2019, and it was great.
Where are we at with solar? Do you think we're going to get to the point where you're going to be able to charge your vehicle up, leave it out for the day, to be able to recharge those batteries? Is that going to be useful? Or how big a solar bank are you going to need to be able to get some sort of meaningful charge out of your vehicle?
Well, massive is the answer. And, Alan Johnson proved that when he drove that Suzuki across the Simpson Desert. It's not feasible. The problem with solar is that there's only so much energy the sun can provide, and even if you're 100% efficient in converting that to electricity, and you won't be, it simply isn't enough. So solar at best is going to be a top-up. You're not going to get a solar-powered day-to-day driving car anytime soon. I have seen examined closely a solar-powered race car at Phillip Island when I was down there with BMW, and that's, it's so light, it's probably about 40 kilos, and, they worry about putting stickers on it because it's going to be too much drag and so on, and it's got tiny little bicycle wheels, and everything's they're shaving grams here and there, right? And that can only work in direct sunlight. So I can't see solar being a real power source other than just a nice top-up here and there. But I do think it can work, is having a bank of solar panels on your roof, and then you charge a house battery in the day, and then you come home and then you can use that power. That's where I think solar could be useful.
So realistically, your long-range tourer, as long as they're still allowed on the road, there's still always going to be a place for them then, petrol or diesel.
Yeah, look, that's my belief. And if we look a bit further at what Labor's actually saying here, they're saying two things. They're saying they want to have a target of half of private vehicles sold by 2030 electric. That's a target, so they're obviously not fixed about it. And interestingly, most European countries are ahead of that. And in fact, Elon Musk came out just a day or so ago and said something to the effect of, yeah, that's great, Australia, but you guys are behind the times with this already. You need to step it up. Now, obviously, he's got a vested interest as being the man in charge of Tesla, but nevertheless, he does have a point. Pretty much every European country is way ahead, every other country is way ahead of Australia. So I think our electric vehicle sales are 0.4%. I think Norway is up to 4% or something like that, and rising, because the Norwegian government's given a whole bunch of subsidies to try and get that off the ground. And the danger for Australia is this. The world is moving in a certain direction with hybrids, electric cars, and potentially hydrogen at some point. And there's no turning back. That is the way the world is going. So sooner or later, that's the cars we're going to be driving, whether we like it or not. So no one's going to make a special car just for Australia. So we had better get our act together with the charging stations and all the infrastructure needed so that we can actually get these cars operational when they launch it, when they arrive. I don't think that's going to be a major problem because it's a gradual change, right? I mean, EVs, electric vehicles, have been around for a while. We're going to get more and more. It's not as if it's going to be overnight to take everything away, but we do need to pay attention to that infrastructure.
So hydrogen fuel cells, is that a solution to the problem?
Yeah, hydrogen is an alternate way of propelling cars. Basically, it works pretty much like an electric vehicle, except you've got a hydrogen power plant there instead of pure electric. And you can get great range. You can get 900,000 k's out of it. You could kind of think of like scuba tanks inside a vehicle powering it there. So hydrogen cars are a reality now, and they could be very effective. The big problem with hydrogen is that there's no infrastructure for it at all. Electricity, there's infrastructure everywhere now. Okay, it's not sufficient current draw. You can charge typically an EV at home, and it take you an hour's worth of charging would get you 11 kilometres down the road. So overnight, you're not really going to get too far. But there's not even that for hydrogen. You can fix up your home electrical output and make a higher powered charging system fairly easily. You can't do that for hydrogen. However, there is one area where hydrogen will it could really work, and that is with, I guess, council fleets and buses and so forth, where you make the investment to build a hydrogen station and you run all of your trucks and buses and short-range heavy vehicles on hydrogen. So they go out in the day, they do what they've got to do and come back, and then they refuel with hydrogen. And that way you don't need much in the way of infrastructure, but you've got huge operating costs reductions there and much less emissions. Now, if that starts happening, then that will be the start of people getting used to hydrogen and hydrogen infrastructure being used around. And that could be the case. So it's conceivable that we have electric cars for sort of runabout cars, and our long-range cars in future could be hydrogen. That's a possibility.
Well, how's the hydrogen going to be manufactured then? What's the process that people are looking at for that?
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good point. It's another one. So to create hydrogen, it's actually energy intensive to do that. It takes a fair bit of energy to create it. It's not like electricity, which, if it's renewable, virtually costs you nothing at all. So this is moving a bit outside my sort of expertise into energy management here, but I do know that hydrogen costs a lot of effort to produce, so that will need to be solved as well. Worked out exactly what it is that's being said. So what will happen to Toyota is this. By 2025, every Toyota will be electrified. Now, what that means is that there will be an option in the range for it to be either fully electric, hybrid, or plug-in hybrid, one of those three options there. But it doesn't mean to say that you can only get those three options in their ranges, or that, and certainly not that all vehicles are going to be fully electric. So in practical terms, and let's take the Hilux for example, it doesn't mean to say that there won't be a pure diesel Hilux in 2025. What it means is that there will be a Hilux which is either hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or electric, one of the three. And the difference between the three is pure electric, you completely do away with the internal combustion engine, you just run the car on electricity and plug it in to recharge it. A hybrid is when you've got cars mainly driven on petrol or diesel, but it's also got an electric engine, and electric motor, and that can drive the car a little way at short distances, but not very far, maybe 2 or 3 kilometres, and it's mainly there just to help the main engine out. It's not an electric, well, it is an electric car because it can move by itself, but electric motor is really supplementary to the petrol or diesel. Now, a plug-in hybrid is somewhere between the two. That's got a much bigger electric motor and battery, and that can be charged by an external socket, whereas the normal mild hybrid, cannot be. That's only charged by the engine and regenerative braking. So the plug-in hybrid, you can plug it into the wall, and it will do regenerative braking as well. And typically, you can drive a plug-in hybrid for anywhere from sort of 40 to 100 kilometres or so. Nowhere near the range of a full electric car, but still usable enough for a daily commute. And then the petrol or diesel engine is there when you need it. And examples of that at the moment, Mitsubishi's got the Outlander PHEV. That's been pretty successful. There are over 100,000 worldwide now of that. And Land Rover have just released a Range Rover plug-in electric hybrid, which I'm going to have the pleasure of driving in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Ah, nice. So I'm assuming then, what sort of fuel economy savings are you getting with the hybrids? Obviously, that's the reason that you would be having it. You can harness energy from regenerative braking. How much more fuel efficient are they then?
Well, that depends entirely on the use. So if all you're doing is just cruising across the nullarbor, they're actually less fuel efficient because all you're doing is carrying extra weight. That said, when a vehicle's in a steady state cruise, weight isn't hugely a difference in fuel consumption. It's more aerodynamic drag, which is the big factor in a steady state cruise. Where hybrids come into their own, and be it a mild hybrid or a plug-in, is city driving and stop-start, because, and that's why you see a lot of the taxi drivers and Uber drivers using Camry hybrids, because the Camry hybrid is only $1,000 or so more expensive than a normal one, and it's well worth their money to switch over to the hybrid for a couple of reasons. So, first of all, you're doing a lot of stop-start, and electric cars are really good at stop-start because they've got this fantastic torque off idle. They can just move away instantly and then get the car moving, and then, if needed, the petrol engine can jump in later on and move the car on. Also, in city traffic and urban traffic, then you're spending a lot of time stopped or nearly stopped. And the good thing about a hybrid is that as you're slowing down, the engine cuts, and it doesn't actually start again till after you've moved off. So you're spending a lot of time with the internal combustion engine not working, which is great for emissions and great for fuel consumption. So the short answer is hybrids work really well for reducing fuel consumption and therefore emissions at slow speeds and stop-start, but they're completely useless when you're in steady-state cruise. Now, something else related to this, it came up on my Facebook page actually, was the use of electric utes in farming. And people go, oh, that'd be no good. But one guy was the farmer parked up and said, hey, no, it would be great, because they don't tend to do a hell of a lot of kilometres. They're sort of driving from place to place around the farm there. And they spend a lot of time at slow speed and a lot of time stopped. You know, you sort of stop, you hop out, do something, hop back in. That's perfect for a hybrid and an electric vehicle, plug-in hybrid. It's exactly the sort of use case it's designed for, and you'd use a lot less fuel in that situation. And I think we can translate that through to four-wheel driving as well. If you're on a hard four-wheel drive trip, sometimes you spend more time outside of the vehicle with it stationary than you do actually driving it if it's just a short trip in a state forest. So that sort of situation, I can see electric four-wheel drives really taking off short trips to state forests.
Interesting. What's new in the new vehicle area then?
Well, I just read a bit more into Toyota's statement then about its electrifying its vehicles. So, it said by 2025, everything will have an electric option. Now, I know that they're testing the 300 series at the moment, and I know that they're testing the replacement for the 70 series. I actually put an April Fool's joke up on my page about that, but this is no April Fool's. It is true. They are doing that. So you'd have to assume, and I know that the 70 series is going to be focused on towing, that there's a new 70 series replacement coming. What I'll call it, 71 series, but who knows? And you'd be absolutely have to assume that would be hybrid in some way. And you'd also have to assume that there would be probably a replacement Hilux to replace the N80 coming, as well as the 300 series. So I think we're going to see some fairly exciting announcements from Toyota in the next 3 to 4 years about replacement of some big models there. And again, the same would go for Prado as well. That would have to mean that there would be some form of hybrid Prado coming. So don't you think that's exciting? Just major refreshes and potential hybrid options for Prado, 200 series and 70 series and Hilux.
One of the things that I'm interested in is the cost-benefit ratio. So, like, how much cheaper are they to actually run? And when you look at the whole network effect of it, because one of the things I've heard, well, and some of the politicians talking about, so obviously you don't know if it's true or not, but what's the effect going to be? Like, what's it going to do to power prices? So there was talk of if we increase the number of vehicles on the road, then we're not going to be able to afford electricity because everyone's going to come home, plug their cars in to charge overnight, and that's going to create all sorts of issues with the power grid. Now, one would have thought, as the number of electric cars ramp up, and people who buy electric cars, they're probably much more likely to have solar cells on their roof and also have, a battery in their house that they're going to be charging during the day, because that's when most people aren't using their power, but when solar is available. How do you sort of think that that's all going to play out?
Yeah, look, fact is, I don't know, because it's going to take someone who's more of a sort of, I guess, national energy specialist than I am to figure that one out. But what I do know is that politicians are definitely prone to making fear-mongering claims. So, as you say, anything they say needs to be treated with extreme caution and just look at the actual experts there. One thing I do know is that once it gets past about midnight, then there's very little demand on the electrical system. So it could well be that maybe cars start charging only after midnight, for example, and got a few hours to charge overnight. And if you've got a decent charger, then that could be the case there. But yeah, probably more of a push for renewables. It's been well known that Australia's energy policy has, for various political reasons, really not got off the ground, and we don't really have a good energy policy. And I think with the advent of electric cars, the country is going to be paying for the inaction of our politicians to come up with some form of coherent energy policy. As I say, these cars are coming, right? These cars are coming. Whether we like it or not, they're coming. No one's going to build a car just for Australia and other laggard countries. It's going to be plug-in hybrids or nothing. And the reason is because emissions, right? The interesting thing is if we go back to the sort of late 1800s, then the predominant form of moving around transport was horse. And, I bet the horsemen of old looked at the new motor cars and go, well, why do you want to use one of those things to get from Melbourne to Sydney? This horse is much faster over the rough path than your car. You're sort of bouncing along at barely a walking pace there, and you break down every 5 minutes, and you know what? You've got to carry all your own fuel with you, whereas I can just turn my horse loose in the nearest paddock and it can refuel itself, and every inn along the way has got hay and water for my horse. What the hell do you want do you want this sort of new motor car thing for? And I feel that we're at kind of the same way with electric vehicles, and there's lots of people naysaying, I can't do this, can't do that. Okay. Yeah, you know what? None of these problems here are insoluble. Some of them are problems to a greater degree, yes, but I just can't see any of them being insoluble, particularly given the sort of gradual change that we've got coming here.
Exactly, and I think everyone is becoming a lot more concerned about the environment, and it is one of those things. I'm becoming increasingly concerned about the future of diesel. I don't think, with the latest standards, I probably won't get a diesel vehicle next. I'll probably be looking at petrol. And it'll be interesting to see, the vehicle that I have after that, it's going to be 4 years down the track, and I'm wondering what that's going to look like, because I'm not convinced it's going to be a straight petrol motor.
Diesel's dead. Diesel is a dead man walking. And the reason is emissions, right? Diesel produces NOx, which is basically a class 1 carcinogenic. In other words, it is absolutely a cause of cancer, and that's what diesel engines spit out. And look at what's happened to diesels over the last 20 years. We've got exhaust gas recirculation, where you take exhaust gas and you stuff it back into the combustion chambers, right? I mean, that's not a great thing to do, but we do it for emissions, right? We've got DPS, and those just burn up, cause problems, etc. Use extra fuel when they burn stuff off. But yeah, we've got diesel particulate filters. And now we've got AdBlue. We're having to carry around 20, 30 litres of a fluid and inject it into the exhaust. So, and not only that, we've now got common rail injection, where we're injecting incredibly high high pressure droplets of fuel to sort of ever so carefully meter out all the emissions. Like, it does help torque and power, admittedly, there. So you know that old bit about, oh no, diesels are really simple, take the battery leads off, they run underwater. Yeah, not true at all. And basically the engineers are just trying to squeeze every last little drop out of the diesel technology to keep pace with ever tighter and tighter emissions. And that's why Dieselgate came up, because virtually every car company cheated on Dieselgate, because the engineers looked at tests and were like, geez, that's going to be too hard. Why don't we just cheat? And they did. And that's how cars managed to pass it. So diesel's dead, right? It's just a dead man walking. But you know what? A petrol electric is actually a pretty good substitute for diesel. Because what do we all love about diesel? Torque, right? That's the first thing. Yeah. Everyone loves it so much that car manufacturers even put the torque figure on the back of utes and so forth. And it's like, torque, right? It's the blokey thing to do. You know what's got torque? Electric motors. They have got stacks, oodles, choose your cliche, of torque right off idle. And then you've got the petrol top end there. So it's a match made in heaven as far as I'm concerned, petrol electric hybrids.
Exactly, and that's where I think, in 5 years' time, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of designs, what sort of models are out there, as long as we can still get that range. For me, probably not a huge issue, because there's only a couple of times that I've never gone on a trip where I've needed to take a couple of jerrys of fuel with me. But, if you're out doing a desert or doing one of the big trips where fuel can get pretty expensive and it's a fair few Ks in between petrol stations, then that starts to become a real consideration. And anything that decreases range there is going to create issues.
Well, yeah, look, I've never worried about the cost of fuel when I'm on a remote trip, and I actually consider it a privilege to pay a higher price out in remote areas, because you're supporting the community. They don't make a lot of money. When you see fuel out there for $2.50 a litre, they're not making 80 cents a litre profit out of it, because the cost it takes to get out there. And also they don't have the volume coming through. So, they might have some waste fuel there or anything else. So, for me, I'm quite happy just to go out there and just fill my car up. And also when I'm travelling remote, I really hate to pass any opportunity to fill up, because you just don't know when you might get a second chance there. And it's an incidental cost, really, high fuel cost in the outback there. So I've never had a problem. I'm paying it.
No, but it can be a problem when you run out of fuel.
Yeah, and that's why I think electric cars need to get a lot better. So take the Tesla X, for example. I did a tow test on that of a trailer on the back, a T-van, which weighed in at 1,000 kilos. 470 claimed range. I reckon we were probably getting around 220, 230 out of it. So probably maybe a bit more than half. Let's be generous here. So if the claimed range is 470, now I'd want a range of at least 500 or 600, like you can get out of that, towing that sort of thing. Right? So I'd want the claimed range to about quadruple, I reckon, triple at least, before I'm saying, yep, all right, that's now a vehicle you could take. That's what I'd want to see there. And more charging stations. So there's more and more charging stations around Australia. Nowhere near as many as fuel, but, you can now do the Melbourne-Sydney run very comfortably and have quite a choice of charging stations, which is good. Got to see those in places as well. And the time will come, I'm certain of it. It's definitely going to come there. And we could even have, a pure electric car, what's called a range extender, where you've got a pure electric car, but you've got a small petrol engine or in the back, just to charge up the battery, and you can run that off petrol. Now that's kind of the way diesel electric locomotives work, and there have been cars like that. Holden Volt, for example, now discontinued. So look, it's coming whether we like it or not.
What are you in the short term? What are the manufacturers got coming out that's new?
Well, mostly petrol electric and hybrids, surprisingly enough. We've got the Jeep Gladiator, which isn't either, but Jeep have in their business plan a mild hybrid. I spoke to a friend of mine whose opinion I greatly respect on this, and he was on the press launch, and he said that he stopped his car halfway through, this is in the USA, and placed a call to his dealer and said, I'm buying a Gladiator. That's how impressed he was of it. So, and you can see why, different variants of it there, up to almost 33-inch tyres, twin lockers, live axles front and rear, 3.5-ton towing, big bed, looks to business. My concern of the Gladiator is I think the payload's a bit ordinary, at about 700 kilos. It's kind of an issue with American utes. The payload's often pretty poor on them, but I think it will do well when it comes over here. Provided, of course, Jeep don't price it through the roof, which, hopefully they've learned a bit from the JL.
Yes, I think it's the big thing that I'm waiting for. I think it's going to look epic. I can't wait to test drive one. So there you have it. Lots of news. I think our four-wheel drives are going to be safe for a little bit longer. It does reinforce the news, though, that diesel is going to be dead. I've been thinking for a while my next vehicle is going to be a petrol one, and I'm probably waiting for the Jeep Ute. I'm pretty excited about that. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It really helps us to get the word out there, and hopefully I'll see you on the track someday. Bye.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free. If you're looking for a good route, check out 4x4earth.com today.